This presentation is on computer accessibility. Both Windows and Apple products have accessibility features built into their operating systems. For Windows or Windows 10, the section on the computer to look for is Microsoft's Ease of Access Center. On a MacBook, it's called Accessibility, which is found under System Preferences. In the past, or depending on if you have an old iOS, it may be called Universal Access. Windows accessibility or ease of access settings can be found by typing in the search menu bar on the desktop. Click on Type here to search and begin typing ease of access, and it should pop up at the very top. This window will open up all the accessibility features of a Windows 10 computer. Over the next couple of slides, I'll go over a couple of keyboard modifications available in the accessibility features of Windows 10 in ease of access and on a MacBook computer. These include sticky keys, filter keys, toggle keys, and mouse keys. Sticky keys can be turned on by hitting the Shift key 5 times. When sticky keys is enabled, this menu bar will pop up that says, do you want to turn sticky keys on? And you could hit yes. You can also enable sticky keys by going to the Ease of Access Center, clicking on Interaction, Keyboard. Under Keyboard, it will say Use of Sticky Keys, turn it on or off. And in this section, you could also enable the shortcut key of using those Shift key 5 times to turn sticky keys on and off. Now, sticky keys in action. Open up a Word document. If I was to type my name, I would hit Shift button 1 time. You would hear a noise. Then the letter C, and it capitalizes it. The next letter I press would be a lowercase, because what sticky keys does is basically hold down the button for you, so you don't have to use both hands. Like if you were capitalizing normally, you would hit Shift, hold it down, and then press the letter you wanted. This would also work with things like cut and paste and Control-Alt-Delete. The button will be held down. It eliminates the need mostly for children or adults who capitalize letters by using caps lock. That one step of going back and forth, hitting caps lock, pressing the letter, and then going back to turn caps lock off. Filter keys, or repeat or slow keys, is an option that you could turn on in Windows to help you ignore or slow down repeated keystrokes. For example, if you have ever dropped something on a keyboard and you had a Word document open, the letter S might have ended up 1,000 times on the screen, or the letter W, whatever it fell onto. This is something that you could turn on in both Windows and Mac computers to slow down that repetition, ignore the repetition, or even set it that you might have to hold the button down for a certain amount of time before it actually registered that keystroke. Filtered keys can be found under Ease of Access, Interaction, Keyboard. By clicking it on and off, you're given a set of choices using other alternatives to filter keys, which includes bounce keys, slow keys, and repeat keys. By just turning on filter keys on its own, let me show you what it would look like in a Word document. let's say I was to type my name. I type C, H, R, and I get stuck on the letter I. So right now you don't see this, but I'm holding down the letter I. And it's not repeating the letter. Now if I had filter keys off, and I went back to that Word document, and I typed the letter S, and I held it down, it will continue to write the letter. Now, one alternative, just to give you an example of when you have filter keys on and you use something like slow keys, let's set it for 1 second. And I go back to my Word document. I'm going to hold down the letter T, start holding it down. I'm still holding it. And you could see the delay. I'm going to let go, press it again, holding. The delay of how long it takes before it registers that letter. And that's this right here, the 1 second. And I could change that to 2, 5, whatever it might be. And you might need that depending on the client you're working with. Another modification is toggle keys, which creates a noise, an auditory cue, whenever you might hit caps lock, num lock, or scroll lock. The other is mouse keys, which lets you control a mouse pointer or a mouse cursor using a numeric keypad on your keyboard. It's also available on a MacBook and is also called mouse keys. Two more features under keyboard interaction accessibility is toggle keys. Toggle keys might be helpful if you have someone that hits the caps lock button or number lock button on accident. What it does is it gives more of an auditory cue that it's been pressed. So if I hit caps lock, I would hear a little beeping sound. The other feature is what they call mouse keys. Now if I click on interaction mouse, I could turn my numeric keypad, which depends on what type of keyboard you have. You might have a keyboard on the far right side has a number pad. If I turn mouse keys on, what this allows me to do is use my number pad as a mouse. So if I hit the number 2, the mouse moves down. If I hit the number 6, the mouse moves to the right. And 8 up, or 1 diagonal. So it's almost like making my keyboard be able to do mouse functions along with keyboarding functions. Two more features under keyboard. On-screen keyboards. An on-screen keyboard is basically a virtual keyboard that's presented on a desktop or laptop. We're familiar with on-screen keyboards because we use them on a daily basis when we use our smartphones and tablets, if we're creating a text message, surfing on Safari or Internet Explorer, or possibly posting onto Facebook. Windows and MacBooks both have on-screen or virtual keyboards in their accessibility options, or in the MacBook, it's under Keyboard Viewer in language and text. It's basically a virtual keyboard that could be accessed on Windows, at least, in both direct access methods by touching the screen or indirect through scanning. There are three methods of access for a Windows and MacBook computer on-screen keyboard. One is using a mouse click, or if you have a touchscreen desktop or laptop, you can actually direct select the keys you would like to press. You can use dwell or hover, which is only available on Windows, in which you hover over the key that you want to press and it would automatically click it for you. The third option is scanning, which is an indirect method of typing in which the computer automatically runs through the keyboard, and when the key that you want is visible, you would hit a switch. And I'll go over that in the next video. Just an FYI, on an iPad, you can also click directly by tapping on the screen, and you can even scan using one or two switches, the on-screen keyboard, to type. Another way to make it easier to type or use your keyboard is using a on-screen keyboard instead of a physical keyboard. In order to turn an on-screen keyboard on Windows 10, you can go to the Ease of Access Center Interaction Keyboard and turn on-screen keyboard on, or you could even search it in the Start menu. There are a couple ways to use an on-screen keyboard on Windows. There's a few different ways to interact with it. One way is just using your mouse and clicking on the letters that you want to type. As you could see, if I was actually typing, I would have word prediction similar to an iPhone or Android phone while you're typing using your thumbs. Word prediction can pop up here. That's usually beneficial for those who are using an on-screen keyboard on a desktop or laptop with a mouse. There are a couple of other ways to use an on-screen keyboard with Windows. If you click on Options, you can use what they call hover or dwell. Now, what this allows you to do is it eliminates the need to click. So if I would hover over the letter for a certain amount of time, it would register that and type it. So you can see W, H, and this timing of how long it takes to make the selection can be adjusted in options, making it shorter or longer. Another way to interact is through scanning. Now, we talked about scanning with switches. This would be a way those switches can be connected to a computer, and it could be used to interact with an on-screen keyboard. Now, for purposes of this, I'm going to use the space bar and show you what it might look like. It's going to use automatic scanning. So if I hit OK, I hit space bar, it's going to start scanning through the keys. And right now the scanning is pretty fast. I think it's 1 second. So if I want to select the letter M, I'm going to look at that letter M, wait till it's on that row, press spacebar again, press spacebar again, press spacebar again. You have to be pretty fast on timing, but you could get the idea of how it would work. I'm hitting one button in order to type on a keyboard with many choices. You can also resize an on-screen keyboard. So if you are using it with just clicking on the keys or hovering, someone who has limited range of motion can still be able to type in a small area if that keyboard is condensed. So limited movement. And we'll talk about ways to modify the mouse to help with that later in this presentation. Click and Type is an example of a commercially available keyboard that you can find online. It is more customizable than the Windows computer's on-screen keyboard. It's just an option which is free, which in the past, the on-screen keyboard on Windows did not have word prediction, so Click and Type was the alternative. Word prediction. Originally, word prediction was created to help reduce typing effort and increase typing speed or words per minute for someone who's typing with one hand or possibly had a disability. It does come in handy for people who may, or children who may have trouble with spelling, because the prediction will predict the word for them as long as they could phonetically spell it. A lot of people nowadays use word prediction on a daily basis when they're text messaging, and also because they can spell. The word prediction pops up on the on-screen keyboard they're using on their tablet or smartphone. Word prediction does not come in handy if you are a touch typist or type fairly well with one hand, because of this word box. This word box pops up for CoWriter and WordQ, which are both commercially available prediction software. And what happened is people attend to that area of the screen, therefore decreasing their words per minute, because normally they would type a little bit faster because they're looking at the screen or the keyboard. So it takes their eyes away from what they're typing. It does help, however, with word production, because while they're typing and other words pop up in those word boxes, their sentences become more complex or have more words in them. Word prediction for these commercially available products, including WordQ and CoWriter, have the ability to have word banks, so you can copy and paste a whole Wikipedia page and it'll pick out the most common words. So a teacher could, let's say, is teaching about World War II, and she makes a word bank with the dates and treaties and famous people involved during the war. It will pop up in the word bank. So while a child or student both is writing an essay, the words that are most common will pop up in the word bank as they're typing. So if they're typing Germany, they will pop up in the word bank just by typing G, E, and R. Swype is another access method for an on-screen keyboard. Most people are familiar with Swype if they have an Android tablet or a smartphone. It's using your finger, swiping it across the keyboard without letting go. And for some reason that I cannot explain, you can type out words. Swype is now available for iOS. It is probably coming out one day for a computer like a Surface tablet. I haven't seen it yet, but I know I saw it in beta form. The next video will describe some accessibility features that are both part of ease of access and just plain old part of mouse options, things that have been part of mouse options before ease of access was even created. And that was things like changing the speed of your cursor and the way you click a mouse and changing your left and right click buttons. In the next video, you'll see things like click lock, which helps you drag something from place to place on a desktop, or using the control key to target where your mouse ended up on the screen. I'm going to give you an overview on different ways to make it easier to use a mouse. You can change these features by clicking mouse in ease of access and change other mouse options under mouse. or I usually like to go to type mouse in the start menu and click on mouse settings. So in this section, you can set your primary button, whether you're lefty or righty, so left and right. You can go then to additional mouse options, and I'll go over some other features. Now, that primary and secondary buttons is the same as setting this part right here that says left and right. Select your primary button. Here it would be. I'm going to give you an overview on different ways to make it easier to use a mouse. You can change these features by clicking mouse in ease of access and change other mouse options under mouse. Or I usually like to go to type mouse in the start menu and click on mouse settings. So in this section, you can set your primary button, whether you're lefty or righty, so left and right. You can go then to additional mouse options, and I'll go over some other features. Now, that primary and secondary buttons is the same as setting this part right here that says left and right. Select your primary button. Here it would be switch primary and secondary. You can also change your double click speed, which rarely I do. What I do use on a daily basis is click lock. Now, if you had to drag something from one side of the screen to the other, you would have to hold down left click in order to do so. Right now I'm holding down left click and moving this screen back and forth. What click lock enables you to do is to hold down, let me apply it, hold down left click, release the left click, and still be able to move it back and forth. It's almost like sticky keys for the mouse. Okay. It's very hard for somebody with a disability to maintain that hold on a left click of a mouse. So this allows them to do a lot of things that they weren't able to do in the past with certain software. Think of graphic software like Photoshop or video editing like Premiere. Let me turn click lock off. That could also, the settings can allow you to set how long you have to hold down the button before it will hold it for you. You could also change pointers, possibly making it a different color. There's some different schemes already built in, including extra large cursors, so your mouse cursor might look a little bit easier to see, turning it black, or maybe another color like, I think you could set it to be red or blue, whatever your needs might be. Let me put it back to white. If you go into pointer options, you could set your pointer speed. I don't know if anyone has ever done this before, but you can speed it up. So when a slight movement of your mouse will shoot you across the screen. Okay. Or maybe you have tremors or poor coordination and you might slow down pointer speed. So if you slow it down, it requires more motion and even lifting up the mouse in order to get it There are mouse options both on Windows and on a MacBook. Some of the options are in accessibility, and some might just be in mouse properties. With a MacBook, it might be different because of your method of access being a touchpad using a MacBook laptop or possibly using an iMac desktop. You would need to kind of search through the different menus to find what you're looking for. Just to review, you can change your primary and secondary buttons on a mouse, whether it be you are lefty or righty and you need to switch it back and forth. It could be because you're a young child and you have difficulty distinguishing between left click and right click, so you would flip the buttons. It might be due to arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis, possibly having a radial drift, and you would need to click the opposite to make a left click. You also may have to use click lock again, which is something to help you with dragging. It locks down or sticks the left click button so you don't have to hold it down, and you could bring something from place to place. It is Windows, but there is a way, and I think it's just built into your touchpad of your MacBook, that if you hold it down long enough, it will lock onto the window and you can drag it from place to place with a MacBook. So to review, pointer speed, changing the speed of the cursor to slow or fast, or just keeping it in the middle, depending on range of motion. You might speed it up to fast, so this way a slight movement will move the cursor from the left side of the screen to the right. Snap to, which is used to help with range of motion also if you need to, if you're clicking on a yes button or a no in a dialog box. If you get close enough, it'll snap to the box. Pointer trails, that's to help with visibility. Hide when typing, that's if you're typing on a computer in Word. This is default. It hides the mouse cursor so it doesn't interfere with your attention. Locating the mouse cursor can be done by pressing Control key. This could be turned on also in mouse properties. On a MacBook, you could locate the mouse cursor by, it's almost like shaking the touchpad. If you swipe back and forth on your touchpad with two fingers, like I think it's about 3 or 4 times back and forth, the mouse cursor will pop up and show you where it is. Before I review Windows 10 new ease of access feature to change the mouse cursor size, I want to just tell you about a commercially available piece of software called BIGGY, available from RJ Cooper and Associates. I think it's rjcooper.com. BIGGY allows you to change the size of the cursor. In the picture you see in front of you, it is red, but you can change it to a dog, a cup of coffee. There's a bunch of different objects and icons that you could change them into, and you could actually probably even download your own from the internet. In ease of access, under cursor and pointer, you can see that Windows 10 now allows you to change the size of your cursor. It could go from 1 to 15, pretty big cursor. And you could also change it from white to black or invert the colors. So it's black, and when it you hover over something, it has almost like a transparent look to it. You can also change it to any color you want, suggested colors, or pick your own color and hit done. Similar, you can make it to be like BIGGY and make it bright red. You could also change in this section, besides just changing the cursor size, you could change the cursor thickness when you're typing. So how much it highlights the word as you're typing. And you could also change touch feedback. This is if you had a touchscreen computer. Accessibility, if it doesn't fall into Windows or Mac, there are other software programs out there to help with mouse access. One is Edgeless or Mouse Wrap. It will work by when you're moving a cursor all the way to the left side of the screen, it will pop up on the right. Or if you move up, it will pop up from the bottom. So if you have range of motion difficulties, possibly you might be using a joystick, which you could only move to the left. You could technically, or maybe you can move to the left and up, you could technically still move all over a desktop. The other one is Dwell Clicker, which when you're similar to the on-screen keyboard, you will be typing by hovering. Dwell Clicker gives you a small little menu box on the side of the screen that will be something like left click, right click, double click, and drag, for instance. And you would hover over one of the buttons and then select something on the other side. So it eliminates the need to actually mouse click. The next video will show you a little example of magnifier, which is available in Windows. The MacBook also has ability to magnify or zoom, which you can find in accessibility. A lot of magnification is also available on Google Chrome, your iPad, your Android phone or tablet. It's just a way to magnify the screen so it's easier to see. Magnification can be used for anyone, whether they're 6 years old or 86 years old. If they have trouble with vision, magnification is something helpful for them, and it's built in to Windows 10 computers. And if you go to ease of access, vision, magnifier, you could turn magnifier on. Now, there's 3 ways to use magnifier on a Windows 10 computer. If I go into views here, there's full screen, lens, and docked. Right now it's set on full screen. And when I move around the screen with my cursor, it's sometimes, if you think of it, hard to find what you're looking for. Okay, so I don't usually use full screen. Most people do use docked, which shows a magnified bar up on top, or depending on where you want, you can put it on the bottom. So where I'm moving to on the desktop, if I'm moving to where it says turn on magnifier, it's zoomed on in a window at the very top of the screen. And again, that could be changed. You could change the zoom. You could even change the size of that box. Personally, after using magnifier over the past few years, I found lens to be the best magnification for ease of use. Because where you move with your mouse, it's magnified. So it does make it easier to get around and navigate a desktop. And this again you can change the zoom levels through settings. So you can make it more or less.